Hi, in today's video I'll teach you how to structure your workouts actually properly so you can get real viable results. So first of all, a lot of people struggle with it and they don't know how many exercises, what kind of exercises, what order, how much rest, and how many sets they should do. So, so you can understand how to do this properly, I'm first going to teach you what not to do, and after that I'm going to teach you some good examples and we're going to structure a sample workout together. So the first mistake is very simply doing too much volume. So the optimal volume for growth is about 10 to 12 sets a week per muscle group. So that means 10 sets of chest, 10 sets of back, basically in 1 week. Hard sets. So one hard set means a set where you push either to complete muscular failure or you're going to be very close to it, which means that you basically you would only have 1 rep left. However, I would recommend you to go to failure simply because especially if you have less time, going to failure will long term be better for muscle growth. You will see more growth. Intensity is always more important than quantity. Remember that. So, technically, you could also grow with 1 hard set a week. However, I would recommend doing at least 4, simply because with 1 hard set, you are going to grow a little bit. However, it's going to take you a lot. Like, the growth is going to be very slow. So don't do that. If you want to grow muscle properly, do at least 4 sets a week. However, optimally 10 to 12. You can even do 8 to 12, it doesn't really matter. So, an example of what not to do would be 3 sets of bench press, 3 sets of incline dumbbell press, 3 sets of shoulder press, 3 sets of front raises, 3 sets of dips, and 3 sets of skull crushers. This is an example push workout of a push workout that has way too much volume. This is way too much. Way too much. If you're natural, it's very hard to even recover from this. So, next mistake is doing too many different exercises. So, the main driver of muscle growth is progressive overload. That means that you want to try and progress the exercise that you did in every single session or every single other week by either adding more reps or doing more weight. Adding more weight. So reps, weight. And that is way easier when you have like only 2 free exercises because then you can focus properly on these exercises. If you have like 5 different back exercises, it's quite hard to track it and it's quite hard to know if you're progressing or not. It's way easier if you focus your attention on only a few exercises because then you're going to be able to progress them more, and as a result you will grow more, you will be better in strength, and you will gain more muscle. So as a guideline, choose 2 or 3 push, 2 to 3 pull, and 2 to 3 leg compound exercises. So basically multi-joint exercise that target multiple muscle groups. A compound exercise, if you don't know, are exercises like bench press, pull-ups, dips, push-ups. So basically anything that's not isolation, not like upper chest flies or lateral raises or whatever, right? Then again, example of what not to do, because what not to do is more important than what to do. 3 sets of pull-ups, 3 sets of chin-ups, 3 sets of single arm rows, and 3 sets of cable rows. This is an example on how to not do your pull workout. These are way too many exercises for the lats. It's not necessary at all. You could just choose 2 of them. That would be enough. Would actually be better as a beginner because you can progress more. So let's move on to mistake number 3. Redundant exercise. Specifically, this applies more to pull movements than push movements. However, there also are some push movements that follow this. So, doing different movements that are in the same plane of motion. So to understand this concept of redundant exercise, we're going to first have to know what the planes of motion are. So there are 3 planes of motion. The frontal plane, which would be think left and right. Then you have the sagittal plane, which would be this one or here this one, which is forwards and backwards. Right? Front would be left, right. Then you have the transverse plane, which would be basically any movement where you have your elbows further out and you go like this around the longitudinal axis. I don't know how to explain this in simple form, but here's a picture, here's another picture. I think you can work this out. I'll give you some examples, don't worry. Okay? So examples for the sagittal plane, basically any exercise where your elbows are close to your torso. Think like this, like this, like this, right? So that would be a neutral grip pull-up, neutral grip shoulder press, a supinated grip pull-down, or a closed grip cable row, right? So example exercise for frontal plane. These are vertical movements. They have to be vertical because, you know, with somewhat flared elbows. That means that basically vertical movements where you take a wider grip, right? So examples would be wide grip pull-ups or wide grip lat pull-downs and a wide grip frontal plane dumbbell shoulder press. So exercise with a transverse plane, basically horizontal movements with somewhat flared elbows. This would be things like a bench press where you have your elbows somewhat flared and you press in the transverse plane, basically doing a horizontal press movement, and also a wide grip row. Imagine a wide grip cable row where you have your arms like this and you pull it towards your clavicle, right? That will also be a horizontal pull movement with somewhat flared elbows, basically a wider grip, okay? Just don't make this too complicated, just remember these, sorry, just remember these things here, right? So next we're gonna move on to another very common mistake, and that is having no proper warm-up or no proper cool-down. So no warm-up or joint preparation can lead to injuries, and also your performance won't be that high, so you won't be able to achieve your maximum performance and actually push your muscles to the maximum load that they would be capable of doing. So any warm-up should have two parts. First one, we have joint preparation and active stretching. Basically something like this. I'll show you an example right now. So this is active stretching, right? Moving your joints, basically moving joints and moving your body parts. And then this is passive stretching. Passive stretching basically means something like this or like this, basically something where you're holding the stretch and you're holding it for, I don't know, 20 seconds or something, right? This does not belong in the warm-up, okay? You can do this after training, but not in the warm-up. Doing this in a warm-up is very bad because that can actually set you up for injuries, and that is not good, okay? So in the warm-up, always do something like this. Arm circles, or rolling your shoulder, or any shrugging motion, things like that, right? Sorry. uh, so first part would be joint preparation, what we talked about right now, active stretching, and then you want a specific warm-up for the exercise. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you do bench press, right? So your warm-up should be an easier version of the exercise that you are about to do. And you should do it for 5 reps, maybe 6. So let's say you can bench 100, let's say you bench 100 kilos, right? For 10 reps, I don't know. Just an example, I know it's a lot, but an example that's so that we can calculate it better, right? So then you would do 50 kilograms for 5 reps in order to be warmed up, and that's it. So you would have the joint preparation, and then you would have the specific warm-up for the exercise. That's it. You don't need any more warm-up. Another example would be box pull. Let's say you want to do pull-ups, right? So you want to do box pull-ups. You place a box under your feet so that you can properly stand on your feet. Then you basically pull yourself up and go down. That is an easier version of the actual pull-up. It's going to help you warm up those muscles so you can be ready for the real exercise. Another thing is that most people never do a cool down. So basically they end their last set of a session and they don't do something to cool their body down before they walk out of the gym or end their session at home or whatever. So my recommendation would be to do hanging from a pull-up bar. Basically you just let your arms passively hang. It's amazing for shoulder health, stretches the whole upper body, improves posture. And also you can do passive stretching, like I showed you before. This one here, that is something that would belong in the cool down. So this one and hanging from pull-up bar, in my opinion, the best ways. So we're gonna move on to the fifth mistake, and that is not enough rest time. This is quite common. So in between compound movements, you need about 3 minutes of rest. And I can explain why. So there has been a study where they had two groups, right? One trained with 1.5 minutes of rest, and the other or 1 minute. I'm not sure exactly. I'll have to go and read it. And then the other one trained with 3 minutes. same amounts of sets, same intensity, everything. The 3 minutes build more muscle, simply because your muscles can regenerate better, and in the next set you can do more reps. Your performance will be way better. So in between compound movements, things like pull-ups, bench press, push-ups, rest 3 minutes. Go to failure in a set and rest for 3 minutes. So in isolation movements, so things like ladder raises, bicep curls, any tricep isolation, 1 to 2 minutes is enough, simply because it's not a multi-joint exercise, it's not a exercise that involves more muscles, and generally speaking your arms can just, recover faster because they aren't that big of a muscle. So if you don't take enough rest, let's say you take only 1.5 minutes between compounds, you have to if you want to get the same growth, you're gonna have to compensate that by simply doing more sets. So instead of doing, let's say 8 sets a week, you're gonna have to do like 15 or something, just to have the same growth. So respect the rest time, rest about 3 minutes in between compounds. Let's move on. Next one would be training sessions that last too long. So, in my opinion, the perfect training session is anywhere between 45 minutes and 1 hour. You can actually also go up to 1.5 hours if you're doing like a longer full body or a detailed upper body or whatever. However, anything more than 1.5 hours is probably going to spike your cortisol levels, which is very bad. If you don't know, cortisol is the stress hormone, right? And cortisol lowers all of these hormones: human growth hormone, testosterone, IGF-1. Every single hormone these is very relevant to muscle growth, right? So by this going up, you automatically lower this and you get less muscle growth. So try to keep your cortisol low. Basically try that your sessions are about 1 hour. If you want to train longer, 1 hour 30 can also work, but I would recommend you stay about you stay under that. Try and do 1 hour, maybe even 1 hour and 10 minutes or whatever. It's not too bad if you go like 10-15 minutes above it, but please stay under 1 hour 30, okay? So next mistake would be, and this is the last one before we come into structuring your actual workout, is too many isolations. So 2 sets at the end of your workout for arms, like for biceps and triceps, 2 sets for triceps, 2 sets for biceps, if you're doing upper body, is enough to grow your arms. 2 hard sets to failure. Because your arms already work in all other compound push-pull movements like bench press, dips, you have a lot of triceps engagement, pull-ups and lat pull-downs, you have bicep engagement. Your arms, if you would do this sort of arm workout that all the influencers taught you, where you do like 5 sets of bicep curls and, I don't know, 3 sets of hammer curls or whatever, you would overtrain your arms, and that will lead to less growth and more fatigue. And if you're natural, you want to minimize fatigue, because you can't recover that fast as someone who's on steroids, obviously. So 2 sets at the end for biceps or triceps, depending on what split you're doing, obviously, is totally enough to grow your arms. Your arms don't need that much attention. So, let's get to the interesting thing now, structuring an example workout. So, every workout should follow the general same structure. You would have the warm-up, you would have the compound movements. So an example, push-ups, pull-ups, bench press, dips, rows, etc. And then you would have optional isolations, like we talked about, bicep curls, tricep extensions, whatever. However, if you're low on time, if you only have like 40, I don't know, 50 minutes or whatever to work out, then honestly just skip isolation. Your arms will grow, but they obviously won't grow to the optimal, the optimal volume or whatever. However, they're still gonna grow. So if you're low on time, just skip our arms isolation. It's not that important. And at the end, you should have some kind of small cooldown. Any, like stretching, hanging, whatever. So, what and how many exercises? Remember the planes of motion, right? Sagittal, frontal, transverse. You should try and have at least 2 different ones in your workout per pattern movement. So you should try and have two pull movements that have different that have one in the sagittal plane, one in the frontal plane, or one in the transverse plane. You don't have to have every single 3 of them. You don't have to have all of them, but you should have two different ones. So you should pick on a frontal sagittal or sagittal transverse and try to get them in your exercises. Basically, pick 2 free push compound movements and 2 free pull compound movements and stick to them. Stick to these, find find some of these that are very fun to you, and try and progress in them as much as you can. So legs is a little trickier, but we're going to speak about that at the end. And also, if you want to add some isolation, I recommend doing ladder raises for side delts, and also some arm isolation if you have time, obviously. If you don't, just stick to that. So, what pull exercise do you need? So you need I'll explain all 3 planes, and then you can pick between those and try to have 2. So frontal plane would be a wide grip vertical pull. Sagittal plane would be a close grip vertical pull or a close grip row, basically a close grip horizontal pull. Transverse plane would be a wide grip row variation. So for frontal plane, simplest example, wide grip lat pull downs or wide grip pull ups. Sagittal plane would be something like chin ups, neutral grip pull ups, close grip lat pull downs, or even things like supinated grip barbell row or dumbbell rows. Transverse plane, very simple. The only thing I can think about right now is a wide grip T-bar row, wide grip inverted row, or a wide grip dumbbell row. So all of these target your whole back muscles. However, the wide grip row biases your upper back, basically your mid traps, upper traps, rhomboids, while the frontal and sagittal plane pulls target more lats. However, frontal and sagittal plane pulls also will target lower traps, rhomboids, and rear delts. So even if you pick only frontal and sagittal, your upper back is still going to have some level of development. It's not like it's going to be totally non-existent, right? So next, push exercises. So the planes of motion are slightly less important, simply because overlap isn't that bad, and 2 exercises in the sagittal plane can actually target different muscle groups. An example, dips and neutral grip shoulder press. So dips target chest, triceps, shoulders. However, they are focusing more of the lower fibers of the chest, right? And then you have neutral grip shoulder press. Neutral grip shoulder press is actually also in the sagittal plane, same plane of motion, basically like this, right? However, it targets your clavicular pec, basically a small fiber of the upper chest, mainly your front delt, and you also have some tricep engagement, right? So at push exercise, you can be more open to doing 2 movements in the same plane of motion, and it won't be that bad, right? So frontal plane would be a wide grip dumbbell shoulder press or a lateral raise. Sagittal plane would be something where you push with your elbows close to your body. So dips or neutral grip shoulder press, or actually also neutral grip dumbbell press where you have where you take a close grip. And then you have for transverse plane things like bench press or dumbbell press, basically the classic push movements, right? Push-ups would also be a transverse plane movement. So an example upper day would be following. So warm up, you have some arm circles and you have some box pull-ups. Then you start with wide grip pull-ups, a frontal plane pull. You go on to do dumbbell press, a transverse plane push movement. Then you do neutral grip pull-ups for the sagittal as a sagittal plane pull. Do dips as a sagittal plane push movement. Wide grip T-bar rows, ladder raises, and then optionally bicep curls and some overhead extensions. I would recommend just doing 2 sets of each one of them and go to failure. 3 minutes rest between the sets. So this is an example upper day. If you want, you can copy it. I even wrote down the planes of motion. And as a cooldown, basically hang from a bar and do some arm and shoulder stretches, right? This is an effective upper day. Like I said, if you want, you can copy it. It is a little longer, simply because you have 3 pull movements and 3 push movements, and you have some arm isolation. However, if you want, you can cut that, you can modify that, so it's up to you. If you want, you can screenshot this, and yeah, let's move on. So, like I said, legs are a little trickier, simply because the 2 main leg compounds, squat and Romanian deadlift. Squats would be for the abductors and quads mainly, and some glute engagement, and Romanian deadlifts would be for hamstrings and glutes, are actually both in the sagittal plane. However, for legs, honestly, it's not important. It's fine if you just do squats and RDLs, you will get away with it, and you can build massive legs just doing these 2 movements. So the whole plane of motion thing can be honestly kind of disregarded for the legs. It's really not that deep for the legs, okay? Now, if you still want a frontal plane movement, you can do Cossack squats. If you can Google what that is. It's basically side-to-side squats where your body sort of switches between one side and other side. I would recommend this over normal squats anyway, actually, simply because it improves your hip mobility, and it's a great sort of functional leg movement. leg movement. So I assume that if you're a guy and your goal is not that really to get massive legs, but you want your legs to be healthy, right? Then Cossack squats will actually be better than normal squats anyway. So now we're going to come to the end. Very simple, a conclusion. So please don't overcomplicate, right? That's the most important thing. Don't try to optimize everything and make every single joint movement and every single plane of motion. It's really not that. It's not that hard to develop a good body with the basics only, right? Pick 2 to 3 different push and 2 to 3 different pull exercises. Depends on how much time you have. If you have less time, you can even pick 1, but I would recommend having 2, even if you have less time. Try to have them in different planes of motion, and if you want, pick 1 isolation exercise for biceps, triceps, and side delts if you want. Do 2 to 3 hard sets per exercise where you go to failure, and make sure to get 3 minutes rest in between those sets so that you are recovered for the next set properly. And also, one very important thing, make sure you pick exercises that are fun. Even if the exercise is not the most optimal exercise, like these gym bros on Instagram and whoever will tell you, these sort of science-based lifters, you know what I'm talking about. If you find the exercise fun, you're gonna progress in it long term, and you're gonna be able to build a lot of muscle simply because you're gonna look forward to do the exercise. You're gonna want to go to the gym, right? If you pick an exercise that you don't like and that you think is trash and that you only do because someone told you it's optimal, you're not gonna stick with it long term, and you're gonna end up quitting, and you're gonna easier end up changing around the exercise, not being consistent, not progressing well. So pick exercise that you find fun. For legs, mainly focus on squats and Romanian deadlift. And if you want to add some calf raises for calves, you can obviously do that. And if you want to go do Cossack squats for hip mobility and whatever, then you can also go and do that. But for legs, honestly, if you have less time, I would recommend you either do Cossack squats or normal squats and Romanian deadlifts. That's it. You don't need to overcomplicate the leg part. It's not that complicated. Yeah. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot of new things, and I hope that you can use that information and make yourself a better or optimal workout split. Yeah, see you next time. Bye.